So we're getting this very small mini celebration for Saber Alter in the release of Heaven's Feel 3 on Blu-ray, and for whatever reason, they're not putting Saber Alter out on a banner, even though they did that last time when the Blu-rays were coming out. And you would think now they actually would want to capitalize on her not only getting a buff, but her getting a new costume as well. Like, I know there are a lot of people that have been waiting for this Shinjuku costume, and now that they have it, they can't summon for that Saber Alter. I mean, I guess you can go to the story banner, but if you can at all help it, please do not go to the story banner. Please just don't do that. You're going to be really going in there for a lot of pain. It's not going to be a lot of fun. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about Saber Alter because I asked you guys on the community tab if you still wanted a video for Saber Alter, even though they're not giving her a banner. And yeah, everybody said, yeah, please do a Saber Alter video. So we're going to be talking about her in today's video. If you enjoy FGO content, I upload these videos every single day. And all I ask for in return is a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel. If you're feeling extra feisty and you really like what I do, you really want to show that extra level of support, you can click that join button to become a channel member. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into Saber Alter, starting off with her hits. Which, unfortunately, she was like one of the first servants to ever come out in the game, so she suffers from really bad hits. If you're one of these older servants, you either have really good hits because DW thought it was a great idea to give Gilgamesh 600 million hits on everything that he did, or you're one of these other servants where they're like, hey man, like, 2 hits on everything is pretty good, right? Like, that's pretty passable enough for a servant. And, you know, no, hopefully with what they said in the 6th anniversary live stream, where they understand that having poor hits on a lot of these old characters causes them to come back and redo a lot of these hits, because this really is just not all that great. It definitely is serviceable at best, and thankfully Saber Alter's main role is farming, so it doesn't really matter that her hits aren't all that great. But it's still like, if her hits were fine, it would open her up for so much more content. Because, like, dude, 2 hits on 1 quick card with 9.9% star gen. Don't even click that. It's not even worth clicking. 0.86% NP gen with 2 hits on 2 arts cards. I mean, if you're able to get some crits on those arts cards, you can refund a decent bit of your NP back. And thankfully, Salter's kit does somewhat allow for her to kind of easily get her NP back because of her own NP and her second skill, so that at least is somewhat of a blessing. And then 3 hits on the extra attack is just really poor. So if anything, her hits really aren't all that good. So hopefully her skills and her NP can kind of save her. Which, I mean, skill 1 is a 50% Buster Mana Burst that lasts for 1 turn and is on a 5-turn cooldown. So, you know, uptime, not the best because it's down for 4 turns, but you're getting a lot of explosive power on that turn. Obviously, if you're using Saber Alter, you want to pop this on the turn that you're getting her NP. Preferably, you pop this on a turn where you have her NP and some Buster cards to follow up on, so you can get a very powerful Buster Brave Chain. Now, hopefully, this gets the same buff that Artoria got. So if you don't know, Artoria is going to get a buff in the future where she turns all of her face cards for that turn into Buster cards. And I think Saber Alter could also benefit from having that, because it allows them to have very powerful turns of Buster Brave Chains, and it guarantees that they'll have that as long as they have any of their face cards. So I think that could be a very powerful buff that they could give her if they decide to buff this skill in the future. Her second skill is the topic of much discussion right now because this is actually making her viable in today's meta. Because originally this was just like 14 stars, here you go, have fun, kind of dookie. Now it's a 20% battery that drops 10 to 20 stars depending on skill level. The reason I'm pointing that out is that if you're a newer player and you have Saber Alter and you are hurting for resources and it's hard for you to level up skills, you do not have to level up this skill because the 20% battery is guaranteed. The only thing that scales with this skill is the stars. I just want to make sure that's clear for newer players that you do not have to take this to skill 10 like a lot of other batteries to get the full effect out of it. And this is actually making her significantly better because she still hits harder than normal Artoria right now until Artoria gets her buff, which is absolutely crazy. So until that point, Salter should still be hitting harder than normal Artoria. And so it still makes her a bit viable when it comes to farming because you have an alternative that's going to hit a bit harder, especially if you're going to start putting a little bit of grails into her. I know a common strategy is to either just grail her entirely because people love Salter, or to just take her to level 90 just so she gets a little bit of those extra stats, and so her damage just does a little bit more. But I was also mentioning earlier that if you can get some crits on those arts cards, she can actually refund a decent bit of NP back, and that's where her providing 20 stars for herself is somewhat decent. She doesn't have any way to guarantee that she'll crit with those because she doesn't have any star weight or anything. I mean, she's a year 1 servant, so she's very straightforward. But it's still nice that she can front a little bit of those stars on her own. You're probably going to pair her with Merlin, who has passive star gen with his NP, so being able to couple this with Merlin's NP should help her crit, and that's kind of what you want to be doing with her. You either want to be critting on the arts cards, or you want to be critting on those buster cards, right? Then finally, there's her third skill, and this desperately needs to get a buff. This is a very, very outdated charisma. It is a 12% attack buff for the entire party that lasts for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. That is the standard basis for what a charisma is, a 3-turn attack buff on a 5-turn cooldown. But this is very poor. It was very poor when it came out, and it's even worse now. This did not age very well. The only benefit of this is that it allows Salter to double buff herself. The attack buff from this charisma multiplies into the buster attack that she gets from her first skill, because if you didn't know, NP damage, card buffs, attack buffs, and special damage buffs all multiply into each other to give you more damage. So it's actually better to diversify your buffs than to just get like 100% raw main attack buffs, right? It's better to have like a 50% mana burst and a 50% attack buff because it'll multiply for more damage. That's the only good thing about this. It being 12% is really bad though. The standard for charismas right now is 20%, and it usually carries an additional effect, whether it be support, where it's giving, you know, extra NP or something with like Merlin or Castoria, or you have like Ishtar's charisma where she gives you extra crit damage. Whatever it be, it usually is 20% and packing an additional effect, and the fact that she only has 12% with no additional effects is really bad. If they want to diversify her from the normal Artoria and make her just a bit different, they could have this be more in line with Ishtar's charisma, where it gives the entire party like a 30% crit damage buff for the next 3 turns. That would make Saber Alter more geared to doing big crit damage, which the other Artoria has no crit buff, so it would kind of diversify them a little bit. That's something I would really like to see if they want to give that to her. But for the love of God, just give it some kind of buff and don't make it like weird curse damage or something. I could see them doing something weird where it buffs the entire party and then it gives herself like an on attack buff where she gives the enemy like 1,000 curse damage every time she hits them, which is not something she needs. She does not need little mitigating curse damage every single turn. Give her something good, please, for the love of God. Then there's her NP, not to, you know, just stall anymore. Her NP, very basic. It's basically the Artoria NP, where it does real big damage, and then the overcharge is refunding her NP by 10 to 30% depending on overcharge level. Something interesting to note though is the reason why Saber Alter hits so hard is when you look at her NP multiplier, it starts at 450%, whereas most 5-stars start at 300%. And when they have buffed NPs, it goes up to 400%. So it's almost like she has a buffed NP already. So if you're sitting there being like, man, I would really appreciate her getting an NP buff, that's probably why they're holding out on that. Because usually AoE Buster Servants go from 300 to 400%. If she's going from 450 to 550, her NP is going to hit like a freight train. It's going to hit insanely hard, which honestly has always been Saber Alter's appeal, so I really wouldn't mind if they did that. Maybe slap on like a 30% NP damage buff that activates first, just for that turn. I think that could also be really good for her. But all in all, she's very passable as a servant. She's nothing super exceptional. If you need somebody that can hit really hard and you have a K-scope because of her 20% battery, she's compatible with that. She's going to be a very solid farmer for just chunking things. She's also going to look really good while doing it because of her costume, so that's also a huge plus. But she really needs a buff to that charisma, and depending on what they do with that, it actually might fix her, because it's really hard for them to buff that mana burst, because I don't know if they want to take her in the same direction as the other Artoria, where they make her this big monkey ape servant for that whole turn by turning all of her cards to buster cards, or if they want to take it in a different direction, which I don't know what they would do. My suggestion would be have her do some crit damage, give her some star weight or something. I think they could kind of diversify her just a little bit, because they try to make all of these like Artoria characters different. So you have like normal Artoria, who's just big buster damage, good farming .jpeg servant. Mordred, who doesn't hit as hard, but she's good at doing buster crits and she's good at killing other Arthurs. Then you have Arthur himself, who is focused on just doing good general crit damage and killing big enemies. And now there's Saber Alter, whose niche was that she hit harder than the normal Artoria, but she's going to lose that when the 5-year anniversary comes around and Artoria gets her buff. So I'm curious, what do you guys think that they could do to kind of help out Saber Alter? What are some ideas that you have for her to get a buff? I think main thing is charisma. And I know they're probably really apprehensive to buff that NP because the multiplier on that NP is already so high. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Please, for the love of God, if you do not have Saber Alter, do not go running into the story banner. I know you want to use her with her costume. She's super hot in her new costume. But jumping into the story banner is definitely not the answer. She'll come back on Raid Up eventually. You can summon for her then. Also, remember, there's a lot of very good banners to come for the rest of the year. We got Space Ishtar, Scotty, Super Orion, tons of good servants. Don't go chasing story gacha, alright? But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys, have yourselves a nice day. Peace, late, guys.